MAPEH. Okay, so ano ba yung mga pag-aaralan natin? So, first of all, syempre, before tayo mag-proceed sa pinaka-magiging lesson natin, kailangan alamin natin ano ba yung magiging objectives natin or tinatawag natin most essential learning competencies. So, when we say most essential learning competencies, these are the things that are expected na matutunan nyo after the discussion na meron tayo. So, for this week, ang expected sa inyo na lesson is to identify the different musical instruments and other sound sources from the lowlands of Luzon. So, ito yung magiging focus ng discussion natin wherein kailangan nating ma-attain or kailangan nating ma-achieve once na matapos natin itong discussion natin. Okay. So, ano ba yung mga topics na di-discuss natin for the whole discussion? So, first part is about the brief introduction of our lesson and then the definition of terms, classification of musical instruments according to Hornbostel Sax system, instrumental music, which are the brass band instruments and the pangkat kawayan. And then the last part will be all about the module activities, which are the activity number 3 and activity number 4. Okay, so proceed na tayo dun sa ating brief introduction about dun sa magiging lesson natin for this week. So, the music of the lowlands of Luzon is composed of vocal and instrumental music. So, as we all know, lahat naman ng music, hindi pwedeng mawala yung vocal or yung instrumental. Laging meron tayong vocal and instrumental. So, later on, we will define what is the meaning of this. Okay? And then, this varies in every province of Luzon. So, wala naman tayong makikitang lugar dito sa Luzon wherein meron silang same na kanta, meron silang same na tono. Even sa pagsasalita, di ba? Kung mapapansin natin, meron silang iba't ibang punto na kung saan na-adapt din yan once na mag-create sila ng music. Okay, so the rural folks of lowlands live as farmers, fishermen, artisan, vendors, and traders. And their music reflects their daily life. So as we hear those songs, ang papansin natin na yung mga kanta nila is all about the daily activities that we have or that they have in their area or in their provinces. Like for example, yung kanta na Magtanim ay di biro. So once na pakinggan natin siya and isa-isahin natin yung lyrics na meron siya, mapapansin natin or marirealize din natin doon na ito pala yung struggles, ito pala yung mga pinagdadaanan ng isang farmer. So, di ba ang umpisa nun, magtanim ay di biro, maghapong nakayuko, di ba? So, doon pa lang makikita natin or napoportray na agad, ano ba yung daily activity nila, ano ba yung lagi nilang ginagawa. And then, because of those activities na meron sila, nakakapag-create sila ng different songs para ma-portray and mapakita rin sa ibang tao ano ba yung meron sa lugar nila. So, kumbaga ito yung naglalarawan dun sa bawat area, lalo na dito sa ating lesson which all about the lowlands of Luzon. Okay, so the practice of their religious and devotion, right, as observed up to this present time, so ibig sabihin from before and up to now, napapractice pa din, okay, is the impact of Spanish colonization in their propagation of Christianity. So when we say propagation, it's all about yung pagpapakalat or pagpapalawak, okay. So, leading to the introduction of different Western form of music. So, because of the Spanish colonization, doon nag-start na kung saan nag-adapt yung music natin bilang isang Pilipino doon sa iba't ibang forms ng music. Like, for example nga, itong sa Spanish na era, wherein, ang ginawa nila, na-adapt natin yung music because of the propagation of Christianity. So as we can see, di ba, meron tayong sobrang daming kanta sa simbahan na kung saan pinapakita rin doon minsan kung paano tayo nagdadasal dapat, ano yung mga penitensya, mga pinagdaanan ni Jesucristo, and so on and so forth, na kung saan ginamit nila to para mahikayat yung mga tao. Ginamit nila to para maging tool para mapakalat yung Kristyanismo sa panahon ng Kastila dito sa Pilipinas. The same with the other countries na talagang sumakop dito sa bansa natin. Example natin is yung Amerika and yung Hapon. So, meron silang iba't ibang way na ginawa na kung saan ginamit nila yung music para mapalaganap kung ano man yung practices na meron sila sa bansa nila. And that's the reason why na-introduce yung yung bansa natin sa different Western forms of music. Okay. So next, ano naman yung mga terms na kailangan nating tandaan once na nag-undergo o pinapakinggan or inaaral natin tong lesson natin. So first one is yung instrumental music natin. Kailangan ano natin to, ma-identify talaga natin siya dahil ito yung pinaka-focus ng lesson natin. So what is instrumental music nga ba? So it refers to any type of music that focuses on instruments rather than voice. So kaya nga siya tinawag na instrumental music from the word itself, instruments, di ba? No, nagpo-focus tayo dun lang mismo sa instruments rather than dun sa voice. So, di ba may mga kanta naman tayo napapakinggan na kung saan meron dun part na instrumental lang. Okay, pero nakikita natin or nakukuha natin ano yung meaning na gustong pahiwatig dong kanta na yun. So, yun yung tinatawag nating instrumental music. So, another definition is that it is also an any type of music that is produced by playing a single or various instruments. So, pwede tayong gumamit ng isang instruments or ng marami pang instruments para makapag-produce ng isang instrumental music. So, maraming example tong instrumental music. Yung nagpe-play ka lang ng guitar, it's an example of instrumental music. Bakit? Dahil hindi naman kinakailangan ng kumakanta or ng lyrics para mabuo mo yung message dun sa tinutugtog mo. Okay, so the guitar alone can provide the meaning na gusto nating ipahiwatig dahil nga dun sa instrumental music. Okay, so what are the classifications of instruments? Okay, so kailangan natin din maintindihan na kailangan nating i-classify itong mga instruments na meron tayo sa paligid natin dahil sobrang daming instruments sa paligid natin and we are all aware of that. And ito yung pag-aaralan natin na bakit nagkaroon ng classification of instruments and tinatawag din natin itong Hornbostel-Sachs classification of instruments. So, classification or the Hornbostel-Sachs classification of instruments is a system of musical instrument classification devised by, please take note of the names na kailangan natin dito, no? By Erich Moritz Von Hornbostel and Kurt Sachs. Okay? And first published in the Script per Ethnology in 1940. So please take note of those names. Sila yung dalawang tao na kung saan nakapag-create nitong idea na to na dapat i-classify talaga yung mga instruments natin. So, they based their ideas on a system devised in the late 19th century by Victor Charles Mahilyon. So, ito talaga yung pinaka-utak nung idea na meron silang Hornbostel and Sachs. So, si Victor Charles Mahilyon is a curator of musical instruments in Brussels Conservatory. So, when we say conservatory, it is a school or a specialized school that deals with the music. So, it's either musical instruments or the notes, the different songs, lahat yan dan inaaral sa isang conservatory. Okay, so Mahilyon divided instruments into 4 broad categories according to the nature of sound-producing material. So, dinivide niya to kung paano daw nakakapag-produce ng sound yung isang instrument. So, like for example, yung isa niyang classification is an air column, next is the string, next is the membrane, and then lastly is the body of instruments. So from this basis, from this idea na, di ba nakapag-create na siya ng 4 classification, doon naisip nila Hornbostel and Sachs na kailangan nilang i-expand yung idea. Kasi masyadong broad. When we say an air column, ano yung specific na ibig sabihin nun? Kasi parang pagdating kila Hornbostel and Sachs, nakulangan sila doon sa idea na okay, an air column, ano yung mga instruments na ipapasok natin dyan? Does it mean na lahat ng instruments na kailangan ng air, under na siya ng air column? So, masyado siyang malawak to the point na maraming tao rin yung nalito when it comes to classification of the instruments itself. So, that's why, ito nga, si Hornbostel and Sachs, in-expand nila to and then mas in-specify nila ano ba or paano ba natin mas makaklasify itong mga instruments natin to make it possible to classify any instruments from any culture. Kasi itong naging idea ni Mahilyan, parang mas naging focus siya dun sa available na instruments, dun lang sa area nila. But hindi niya na-realize na pati sa ibang lugar, pati sa ibang bansa, meron din namang different kind of instruments na wherein kung gagawa siya ng isang unified or isang systemized na system when it comes to classification of instruments, mas magagamit siya and mas magiging useful siya. Hindi lang sa kanila but for the everyone na talagang kailangan nitong classification na to. Okay. So, ano-ano ba yung different classification of instruments natin? So, we have 5 classification of instruments. So, we have the idiophones, membranophone, chordophone, aerophone, and electrophone. So, let's define each one of them. Okay, so when we say idiophones, these are the instruments produce their sounds by means of the actual body of the instruments vibrating rather than string, membrane, or column of air. So, ibig sabihin lang nito, kapag sinabi nating idiophones, ito yung nagkaroon ng vibration dun lang sa mismong body nung instrument itself. Like for example, dito sa example natin, we have the triangle, we have the maracas, and we have also the sleevels, and any instruments na kailangan nating pinapalo or binavibrate. Okay, kailangan nating mag-produce ng vibration para makapag-produce din siya ng sound or makapag-produce ito ng sounds. Okay. So as we all know, lahat naman to kailangan ng vibrations kasi 'di ba sa science sabi nga nagkakaroon lang naman ng sounds once na merong vibration na nangyari and nagta-travel ito through air. That's why naririnig natin yung sounds na yun. Okay, so kapag walang vibration, syempre, wala ring magiging sound tayong maririnig. Okay, so yun yung idea natin dito. Lahat ito kailangan ng vibration. But nagdi-differ lang to kung saan nang mula yung vibration, ano yung naging means natin para mag-vibrate yung way ng instruments na yon. Okay, like for example nga kay idiophone, ang nag-vibrate sa kanya is yung body niya itself. Okay? So when we say naman na membranophone from the word membrane, ayan, these are the different instruments produce their sounds by means of the vibration. Again, take note of the vibration of a tightly stretched membrane. So when we say membrane, ito yung cover. Usually yung iba tela, yung iba balat ng hayop. So maraming klase ng membrane. Wherein ito yung nagko-cover dun sa isang instruments and then once na tinap natin to or nag-cause tayo ng vibration dito sa membrane na to, nagpo-produce din siya ng sound. Ano ba yung mga example nito? Usually dito sa membranophone is yung mga drums. So different kind of drums can be considered as part of the membranophone group. Okay, so meron tayo dito conga drum. Ayan, so may bongo drum tayo. So marami tayong example ng membranophone. So ako, ang take note lang natin dyan lagi pag membranophone drums. Usually talaga mga drums yun nandito sa membranophone natin. So when it comes to chordophone naman, ito syempre napaka naman ito na when we say chordophone, from the word itself, chords, di ba? So it means these are the instruments produce their sounds by means of the vibration, again vibration, of strings that are stretched between fixed points. Okay, so ito daw yung mga strings na naka-stretch from point A to point B. Or pag sinabi nating fixed points, ito yung dulo sa dulo, lahat yan naka-fix siya or kumbaga nakatali siya doon, naka-stay siya doon. Okay, naka-stay doon yung mismong string. Like for example, sa mga guitar, di ba, nakikita natin siya na naka-connect doon sa kabilang dulo kung saan ini-strum ng mga musician and then doon sa kabilang end wherein doon naman siya ina-adjust or doon ina-adjust yung length niya kung gaano ba siya dapat kaluwag or gaano ba siya kasikip. Depende sa tono na kailangan niyang ma-produce. Okay, and then meron din siyang different thickness. Ayan. So, pag bibili tayo ng mga strings, lalo na sa guitar, meron yan iba't ibang number wherein yun yung nagsisignify dun sa thickness niya or yung size niya nung mismong chords. Okay, so yun nga, ang example natin dito, ayan, meron tayong harp, violin, and then different kinds of guitar. Okay? So, meron din tayong vintage piano. Bakit? Yung ibang piano, lalo na yung hindi naman sinasaksak na piano, it has a cord inside, kaya siya nakakapag-produce ng sounds. Okay? Kasi yung iba iniisip, Ibang wala namang string yan eh. Hindi lang natin nakikita but meron siyang string sa loob. And once na napatid yun, mapapansin natin na once pinindot natin yung mismong nota na yon dun sa piano, wala siyang napoproduce na sounds. It's because napigtal yung string sa loob. Okay, so let's move to the aerophone naman. So when we say aerophone, these are the different instruments produce their sounds by means of vibrating air. Okay, vibrating air. So it means kailangan nito ng air para makapag-vibrate doon sa mismong body niya or doon yung mismong instrument. So usually dito naman sa aerophone is yung mga instruments na kailangan nating hipan. 'Di ba? So we have the flute, the saxophone, panpipes, the harmonica. Okay, so maraming klase na instruments basta kailangan ng air bago siya makapag-produce ng sound is considered as aerophone. And then when we say electrophone, these are the instruments naman that have or has electrical amplification. So, when we say electrical amplification, kailangan mo nang nakasaksak or kailangan mo na ng outlet ng electricity before it produce its sound. So, pwede mo naman siya magamit but wala tayong maririnig ng sounds dahil nga kailangan nga ng electricity and yung amplifier niya or yung device na kung saan maririnig dapat natin yung sounds na galing dun sa instruments niya is hindi natin maririnig or hindi magta-transfer sa ibang tao or hindi siya magta-transfer dun or magta-travel sa air dahil nga hindi siya nakasaksak. So, kailangan nito ng electricity. So, that's why tinawag siyang electrophone. So, automatic yan. Ang keyword natin dyan sa electrophone is that the instruments that needs electricity before it can be used. Okay? Or before it can produce sounds. Okay? So, next. So, ano naman yung mga brass band instruments? So, kanina nakita na natin yung common classifications or the 5 classifications of instruments. But, we also have the brass band instruments wherein pwede rin naman silang makategorize dito sa ating 5 classification na na-discuss kanina. But, ito yung separate group. Okay, separate group siya among dun sa mga instruments na nakategorize na natin dun sa first 5 classification of instruments. Okay, so dapat wag tayong malito dun, no? Okay, so ano ba yung brass band instruments? These are a musical ensemble generally consisting entirely brass instruments, most often with a percussion section. So, brass band, usually, pang banda siya or isang group talaga ng mga musicians na kung saan nagpe-perform ng music. Kaya nga sinabing brass band. Pero yung mga instruments nila yung pinaka-ipopokus natin dito kasi, ayan, they are generally consisting entirely brass instruments. That's why tinawag siyang brass band instruments because most of the instruments dito are made up from brass. Okay, so it also classified as woodwinds, brasswinds, and percussion. So, kanina meron tayong 5 classification by Hornbostel-Sachs system, which are the idiophone, aerophone, chordophone, membranophone, and electrophone. But in this case, sa brass band instruments, we have the woodwinds, brasswinds, and percussion. So, let's now define ano naman tong tatlong to. Okay, so when we say woodwinds, these are any group of wind instruments such as clarinet, flute, oboe, or saxophone that are characterized by a cylindrical or conical tube. So ito yung sinasabing tube na yan. Of wood or metal usually ending in a slightly flared bell. Yung slightly flared bell, yun yung dulo kung saan lumalabas na yung sounds that produce tones by the vibration of 1 or 2 reeds in the mouthpiece or by passing of air over a mouth hole. Okay, so like dito sa example natin, we have the clarinet and then oboe and then the saxophone. Ayan, so kailangan natin dyan hinihipan or nagpo-provide tayo ng air para magkaroon ng vibration dun sa loob ng tube. And then once na may pinindot tayo dito, 'di ba? As we all know, sa flute may mga butas dyan na kung saan once na tinakpan natin dyan, yun yung mapoproduce na sounds. Okay, or mapoproduce na nota. So, the same with the other woodwind instruments, ganun din naman yung nangyayari. Okay, so when we say woodwinds, ayun nga, yung mga hinihipan sa brass band instruments. Okay, kaya siya tinawag na woodwind. Ma'am, ba't woodwind? Pero sabi dito, minsan wood, minsan metal. Siyempre, as time goes by, yung mga instruments natin, nag-e-evolve din yan. So, kung dati, made from kahoy lang siya or made from wood, ngayon, yung iba, nagkakagawa na ng way para maging metal siya. Siyempre, kung titignan naman natin yung quality ng instruments, mas maganda talaga kung made from metal. But, hindi lahat ng instruments pwede natin siyang ma-turn into metal. Like, for example, yung gitara. Can you imagine yung gitara maging made from metal? Di ba siguro sobrang bigat na nun? Yung kahoy nga lang mabigat na siya, what more pa kung maging metal. So, the same yung idea dito kay Woodwind. May mga exception na kung saan kailangan talagang maging metal na siya para lang mas mag-function siya ng maayos. So, yung iba naman nag stay ng wood. So, depende talaga yan sa need or gusto ng tao. Okay. So, basta pag woodwind, ito yung mga kailangan ng air or may vibration ng air inside dun sa mismong tube. Okay. So, when we say brass wind naman, so kung kanina yung woodwind, dahil ngayon yung mga instruments na made from wood before, na ngayon, yung iba naging metal na. Ito naman, brass wind instruments, talagang ito yung lahat sila made from brass. Meron lang siyang iba't ibang color, yung iba silver, yung iba gold, yung iba bronze, ba? So, brass wind instruments, ano bang ibig sabihin nito? These are any group of wind instruments such as French horn, trombone, trumpet, or tuba that is usually characterized by a long cylindrical or conical metal tube commonly curved two or more times and ending in a flared bell. Okay, so yung kanina, do sa woodwind, usually diretso lang yung itsura nito, but dito sa brass wind, meron siyang pag-curve, and then yung iba naman, nakapaikot pa yung mismong shape niya. Okay, so doon pa lang pwede na natin siyang ma-distinguish kung woodwind ba siya or brass wind. So, aside from that, that produces tones by the vibration of the player's lips against a usually cup-shaped mouthpiece. So, yung kanina kasi, dun sa woodwind, ang ending nun or yung area kung saan kailangan magbigay ng air is parang pito. Okay? So, parang whistle-like yung dulo niya. Kung saan dun nag-blow ng air yung nagpe-play nito. But, dito kay brass wind, small cup shape yung mouthpiece niya. And then, yung lips ng musician, dun nang gagaling yung air or yung sound na kailangan nilang ma-produce. Kailangan ipag-vibrate muna yung lips, okay, para makapag-produce ng sounds dito kay brass wind instrument. So, ang difference nila, yun nga, kung paano siya nakakapag-produce ng sound. So, both of them kailangan ng air, but yung way kung paano siya papatunugin is magkaiba, and even yung characteristics ng mga instruments magkaiba din. So, take note natin yun para di tayo malito. Okay, so kapag sinabi namang percussion instruments, these are musical instruments such as a drum, xylophone, or maraca, sounded by striking, shaking, or scraping. Okay, so ang katulad nito ni percussion is the same with kay idiophone na na-discuss natin kanina na kailangan strike or paluin, kailangan sinishake, or kailangan ng kinakayod para makapag-produce siya ng sound. So, the same kay idiophone, kaya ginagawa yung pag-strike or pag-shake, it's because kailangan ng vibration for them or for it to produce a sound. So, the same kay percussion instrument. So, ang example natin dito, ayan, as you can see, meron tayong different types of xylophone, dalawa yan. Then, drum, steel drum, maracas, tambourine, triangle, and then isang drum set. Then, meron pa ditong isang drum. So, yun yung mga example natin ng percussion instruments. So, ang take note naman natin dito, when we say percussion instruments, the same with idiophone yan. Okay? The same with idiophone, yung idea niya. Nagkaiba lang, ito, part siya ng brass band instruments, dun yung sa kanina, under yon ng idea nila hornbostel and sax. Okay? Classification. So, sa kay brass band, meron din tayong tinatawag na group of instruments na pangkat kawayan. So, syempre, from the word itself, kawayan, these are the instruments that made from bamboo in various sizes, shapes, and design. Okay, so kung titignan natin yung modules natin, nandyan yung mga example ng instruments. So, the same with the different instruments kanina na na-discuss. Hindi ko na inisa-isa because meron din naman tayong copy dyan sa module. Okay, so binibigyan ko lang to ng definition. Ano ba yung ibig sabihin ng mga instruments na to? And then kung iisa-isa yung instrument, meron din tayong available dyan sa ating module. Okay, so going back dito kay pangkat kawayan, ayan, so yung term na pangkat kawayan is also known as the singing bamboos of the Philippines. So, bakit siya tinawag na singing bamboos? Kasi meron tayong group dito sa Pilipinas na kung saan they are group of people playing different or various bamboo instruments while singing. Okay, so choir sila na merong mga bamboo instruments na ginagamit habang kumakanta, and their group named as Pangkat Kawayan. Okay, so kinuha nila to because of this idea na yung mga instruments nila are made from bamboo. Okay? So, ito yung buong lesson natin. And then, kung meron kayong mga questions, pwede naman nating i-cater yan after this discussion. So, i-take note muna natin yung mga questions natin. And then, if you have any concerns, ganun din yung gawin natin. I-cater natin after nitong buong discussion. So, ngayon naman ang gagawin natin is to move on dun sa ating mga activities dito sa ating module. Okay, so hoping na lahat ng na-discuss ko is clear. Wala tayong mga questions, wala tayong, pwede mag-question, but hoping na malinaw lahat, wala namang naguguluhan, or wala naman kailangang ulitin dito sa part ng ating discussion. So, pupunta na tayo dun sa ating module discussion. I-discuss ko dun kung ano yung mga activities na gagawin natin and kung paano siya gagawin. So, dito naman sa ating activity, sa ating first week self-learning module, okay, so punta tayo dun sa activity number 3 natin dahil yun lang naman yung sasagutan natin. So please disregard the activity number 1 and 2 and then focus on the activity number 3 and then especially yung activity number 4 natin. Okay? So kahit dinisregard na natin to activity 1 and 2, please, pakibasa po yung content ng ating module dahil nandyan po yung mga sagot dito sa ating magiging activity, lalong-lalo na dito sa activity number 3 and activity number 4. Okay, so ano bang meron dito sa activity number 3? Okay, so the instruction on this one is group the different instruments mentioned above according to Hornbostel Sachs classification of musical instruments. So, kanina diniscuss natin is 5 classification yung meron tayo. But, dahil dito naman sa mga given, dito sa module na instruments, wala namang electrophone doon. So, automatic, hindi na natin siya sinali. But, we're just going to focus on the aerophone, chordophone, idiophone, and the membranophone. So, saan makukuha tong different instruments mentioned above? Okay, so yung mention above na po yan is yung pinaka-lesson na nakita natin kanina bago tayo makapunta dito kay activity number 3. So, lahat ng instruments na makikita mo dito sa module na to is yun po yung ika-categorize natin or ilalagay natin kay aerophone, chordophone, idiophone, or membranophone. Okay, so ilalagay natin saan ba siya nabibilang na grupo, yung mga instruments na nandyan po sa loob ng module. Okay, so hoping na maintindihan po at malinaw po yung gagawin natin. Again, igugrupo yung iba't ibang instruments na nandyan sa module, depende dito kay Hornbostel Sachs classification of instruments. So, anong classification lang yung sasagutan? Yung aerophone, chordophone, idiophone, and membranophone. Okay, so proceed naman tayo sa part 2 ng activity number 1. Okay, so dito naman, on the right group ang title, you must search and classify the different musical instruments of the following musical group below. Okay, so we're going to search daw itong group of instruments na ang pangalan ay combo. Okay, so pupunta tayo sa Google and then isa-search mo ano ba yung instruments na ginagamit sa grupo ng combo. And then, once na nakita mo na ano yung mga instruments na yon, ilalagay mo yung mga pangalan na yon. Kay aerophone ba siya nabibilang? Kay chordophone, idiophone, membranophone, or electrophone? So, for example, kay combo may nakita kang guitar. Example lang to ha, hindi ko sinasabing tama yung sagot ko. But example lang yung binibigay ko. So, syempre ang guitar is merong strings. So, alin dito sa mga to yung may strings? Or kailangan ng strings para makapag-produce ng sounds? So, ang sagot natin is yung chordophone. Diba? So, gagawin mo dahil under ng chordophone si guitar, ilalagay mo dito guitar. Okay, ilalagay mo dito sa box na to is guitar. Okay, dahil part siya ng group ng combo, ilalagay mo si guitar kay chordophone. And kahilera nitong grupo na combo na nakasulat. The next group is yung drum and lyre. Ano-ano ba yung mga instruments or musical instruments na ginagamit sa drum and lyre? So, ganun din ang gagawin natin. So, may aerophone, chordophone, idiophone, membranophone, and electrophone. So, ano-ano sa mga instruments na yun ang kay aerophone? Ang ilalagay kay chordophone, kay idiophone, membranophone, and electrophone. Okay, last one is the orchestra. So, dito kay orchestra, sobrang daming instruments dyan. So, dapat talagang ma-note natin na mabuti alin yung mga nabibilang sa classification na meron tayo. Okay, so ano-ano ulit yun? Aerophone, chordophone, idiophone, membranophone, and lastly is yung electrophone. Okay? So, yun yung gagawin natin sa activity 3. Napakadali lang yan. Okay, magka-classify lang tayo ng mga instruments. Okay, next. Activity number 4. Okay, so sabi ko kanina, ito yung mas kailangan talaga natin pagtuunan ng pansin or mas dapat nating bigyan ng pansin dahil yung activity 4 natin, hindi lang siya basta activity but this will be your performance task for music this first quarter. So, ma'am, ano yung ibig sabihin ng performance task? Performance task, ito yung mga activities na kung saan kailangan natin gumawa ng extra effort or talagang kailangan natin pag-effortan dahil ang katumbas nitong grade is 70% of your total grade. And then, itong naunang activity naman natin, yung activity number 3, will be under the written works area, which is equivalent to 30% of your final grade. So, even though 30% lang siya, kailangan nyo rin siyang sagutan. Bakit? Dahil hindi makukumpleto yung 100% na grade kung kulang ng 30%. So, the same with activity number 4. May sagot ka nga sa activity number 3, wala ka namang sagot sa number 4 or activity number 4, bali wala din. Okay, so kailangan lahat talaga sasagutan natin. Okay, so proceed tayo sa instruction kay activity number 4. So, dito naman, ganun ulit. Hornbostel classification ulit tayo. Hornbostel sax classification. So, ano naman objective nitong activity natin? The objective is to identify the sounds of different musical instruments being produced based on Hornbostel sax system of classification. So, again, magka-classify tayo ng mga musical instruments. So, ano yung mga materials natin para dito? We must need Android phone, laptop, desktop computer, internet connection, paper, and pen. So, itong paper na to, possible itong module na mismo. And then, syempre, yung ballpen natin. Okay, so first procedure is to go to this link. Okay, so if you have a soft copy of the module, you can click this link right away. But, kung sa modular ka, i-type mo to sa YouTube, and then meron pong video na lalabas. You're going to watch this video, and then after watching this video, meron siyang mga musical instrument na papakita. And then, dun sa mga musical instruments na yun, ililista mo dito. 10 instruments lang yung kailangan natin. And then, these different musical instruments, kailangan natin siyang i-identify based kay Hornbostel sax system of classification. Ililista mo lang yung 10 instruments na makikita mo dito sa YouTube video na to. Ayan, so yun yung activity natin. Sobrang dali, kayang-kayang gawin yan within the span of 1 hour. Diba? Together with the lesson that I provided a while ago. So, hoping na malinaw din to sa inyo yung instruction natin dito regarding sa ating activity 3 and activity 4 dito sa ating module. Okay, so yun lang naman. So, thank you for listening sa ating discussion and hope to see you next time.